Hello, coaches. So this week's lesson plan, or this option anyway, is a little bit different than other ones and different than in-class activities you might have done. So it has a lot more explanatory materials. But once you have a good idea of how this lesson plan runs, I think you're going to find that's actually pretty easy to do. And it's sort of an interesting way of doing things. So this one's called Hexagonal Thinking Review. And basically what we want to do is have the debaters review the concepts and ideas that they've learned this season and draw connections between them together. So together they're going to construct knowledge about what they learned, what it means, and how it all fits together. So this is a really great review, especially if you have a lot of students, like maybe more than 10 students. This is a very efficient way to review information. So we're going to start this practice off. There's going to be 3 parts to this practice. We're going to start off with icebreakers. So for this one, I would suggest asking the group to send you a message, a private message in Zoom or in whatever the chat is, to ask them like either something they're good at that people don't know about or something about them that people don't know about. And we're not looking for something super deep here. We're just looking for something that's like, you know, I'm a really good baker, or I really like anime, something like that, that people don't know about, but that's interesting about them. They should send it to you privately, right? They shouldn't make a group post about it, because what you're going to do with that information is you're going to go through one by one and say, okay, someone sent me a message saying, I'm a really good baker. Who do we think is a really good baker in this group? And everyone else in the group is going to guess and say, you know, maybe write in the chat or whatever to say, you know, I think it's Abdi, because I know he's really good at following directions and measuring things because we're in science class together. So I bet he's a really good baker, something like that, right? You should probably start off the first one by giving an example about yourself. So you shouldn't tell them it's about you, but you should say, you know, something they don't know about you that you're really good at, and then have them guess who it is and be like, no, actually it's me. I'm a really great baker, or whatever it is. And that's nice because you're at a point in the season where they all kind of know each other, but really maybe not that deeply, so they can learn a little bit more about each other. The second thing we're going to do is, before we get to the review, you should figure out who is going to attend the tournament this week, who their partners are going to be, and you should make sure that they're free for the entire tournament time. So try to have them show up at like 3:15 to your room for the tournament so you can all check in. And that way everything will be good to go for the actual tournament start time, and tell them to plan on being done around 6:15 or 6:30. So that way they'll be there for the entire time of the tournament. They'll be free, you know that they'll be ready, and everything will go super smoothly. And then tell me by Wednesday morning who is going to be there, what the partnerships are, and if they didn't debate before, I also need to know their email and ID number. Okay, so that's out of the way. So the actual activity we're doing this week is called hexagonal thinking. If you look in the week 6 review materials, you'll see that there's 4 materials in here. One of them is the lesson plan we just looked at. And then there's another video, and 2 PowerPoints. So the video is basically an explanation of what hexagonal thinking is. And I'll give you that explanation briefly in here, but the video has a much more in-depth explanation. So you can watch through it. It's 10 minutes long, but it's actually really only like 5 minutes. The latter part of the video is a lot more explanation and example, using the example that's in there. And then you have this document called Example and Explanation. And this is the actual written out version as used by the person who created this tool. And you really only need like the first 4 slides in here, but I've included everything in here in case you want to use this in your own classroom. But obviously you don't have to, but if you want to, it's there for you. The final document here is the actual East African debate hexagonal thinking, which is relevant, which is what you're going to actually use. So basically what you have is, you have all these hexagons, right? Kind of looks like a, I don't know, Settlers of Catan map or whatever. Then you have these terms on the right. So you're going to break students into groups of like 3 to 6, depending on how many total kids you have. you want like 2 or 3 groups minimum, maybe 4 groups. And what you're going to do is you're going to share a copy of this with them. You're going to make one copy for each group. Or if you share it with them, they can make a copy for their group if you trust them to. And what they're going to do is they're going to take each of these terms and they're going to drag them into different hexes. They're going to say, okay, East African, I know what this term means. It means this and that. I think that relates to Black Lives Matter. So I'm going to put those next to each other. And then here's how they relate to each other. They're going to give an explanation. And then they're going to say, okay, you know, what's another term? Shootings, like police shootings, that relates to East African, Black Lives Matter. All these 3 relate to each other. And then they would explain how they relate to each other. So basically anything that touches another hex, they have to explain the connections between those things. And they don't have to necessarily do it like this. They could say, like, oh, I understand how East African relates to Minneapolis. And I understand how St. Paul relates to Minneapolis. I'm not sure how St. Paul relates to anything else. So I'm going to put it out here on the edge. Doesn't necessarily need to touch any other terms that are being touched already. So that's what it's going to look like. They're going to just keep doing it for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so, depending on how much time you have. And then at the end, once every group has their map, you're going to ask them to screen share one by one, each group one by one, and sort of explain a couple points. They don't have to explain the whole map. Just choose a couple points of interest that they thought were really good and ask them to try to choose something different than what prior groups have chosen. And what you're going to find out is that every single group is going to have a very different map. They're going to be drawing very different connections between all these terms. But all these terms are related to, you know, what's going on in the world, what's in the evidence packet, and what this topic is about. So this is a really great way to have them review and learn things about the topic without being really direct about what's going on. And so obviously after you're done with all the hexagonal thinking and sharing between groups, you should do your own little review with the groups and be like, oh, isn't it weird how everyone had these 3 terms, but thought about them differently and things like that. And then they should use that information to inform their arguments in the debate. So again, this is a really great way to review the topic. It's pretty fun and kids generally have a pretty good time with it. It's just really a question of, do you feel like your kids need the review or do you feel like they need more practice debate or more information about how to actually make an argument? So I'm going to leave that question up to you. But if you like this, you know, feel free to use it in your class for other reviews. But otherwise, really enjoy, and I hope this works well for you.